What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, a proud partner of the Blue Wire Podcast Network and the Eurostep Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Numac, coming back at you with another positional battle for the fight for the 53-man roster. And joining me today to talk about the defense today, as if he's not here always, is my trusty co-host, Jordan Tresky. Jordan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Doing very well. It's setting in. Packers season is nearly here. I think definitely when family night is on the horizon, starts to feel real, you know,
Real.
real.
Family night on Saturday. So tomorrow, as you're listening to this, as a loyal listener, on Friday morning. And then they play the Bengals on Thursday next week, I believe, the 11th. Friday. My apologies. So a Friday night game against the Bengals in Cincinnati on NFL Network. So that'll be the first real taste of Packers football.
Hmm.
I'm excited. But before we get there, we have some positional battles to talk about. Some defense now. In the trenches defense. Blanket coverage corners. All that good stuff. Before we get into it, a couple of news items, not too much. The Packers dropped linebacker Ladarius Hamilton in favor of linebacker Aaron Mosby, who played with the Carolina Panthers last year. Uh, Aaron Mosby didn't do a whole lot. He had one tackle in the regular season last year, and played looks about to be 2 snaps. So take that with the biggest grain of salt you could possibly find. Bigger than the salt lamps, bigger than like the biggest salt rock you can find. Just like really embrace the salt and Aaron Mosby's stats from last year. But as we talked about on Tuesday, the roster churn in these last 80 to 90 spots on the roster spots 80 through 90, I should say. Just constant churn, trying to make sure that the Packers are getting the most competitive guys in there to try and find maybe the next Roswell Douglas, maybe the next Devondre Campbell, and just try and find guys who are ready to blossom maybe in a new scene.
Yeah, I mean, this is what, like the fourth
Something like that.
day of camp where they've had end of the roster churn.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as we talked about last pod, camp opened a week and 2 days ago. So yeah, that's just when it happens, and maybe it leads to practice squad looks, all that kind of stuff. With some interesting details, I believe it was Bill Huber over at SI, their Packers Central, their Packers site.
Mm-hmm.
He noted that the Packers wanted to sign Mosby last
Last
year
year. Yep.
as an undrafted free agent. He had a higher guarantee from Carolina, and then they cut him. Packers swooped him up. So
Yep.
they've had their eyes on him for a while, obviously. So
Right.
yeah,
You are right
and for what you
that it is like the fourth day in a row they had Cody Crest last week as the receiver that got signed, and then they waived Jonathan Garvin on Monday, claimed James Empey and Andre Miller off of waivers the 29th and the 1st, and then signed a contract with Jake Bates. Not even sure what he plays. The Spotrac doesn't want to tell me.
hmm.
And then waived Ladarius Hamilton, and then claimed Aaron Mosby off of waivers. And then Cole Schneider actually just signed his contract today as well from last pod.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, a lot of churn. A lot of churn. The second news bit that we'll talk about probably a little bit more later is Russell Douglas talking that talk on the sideline. So, sprinkle a little bit of a tease in there before we get to cornerbacks. But should we start with the interior defensive lineman,
Let's
Jordan?
do it.
Players returning, the always formidable Kenny Clark. Sophomore Devontae Wyatt. You and I are both pretty big on him. TJ Slayton, Jonathan Ford, and the rookies being Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden. Bubble guys being Chris Slayton, Jason Lewin, and Antonio Moultrie. The latter two being not so recognizable name wise, but the rest of those guys we've definitely heard of and will be getting a lot of run this preseason.
Yeah.
Kenny Clark,
Yeah, a lot
obviously,
of
the stalwart in the middle.
yes, anchor. whatever you want to call him.
Hmm.
Kenny Clark has been that since basically they drafted him. Um, and then it's a lot of turnover and turnover. That's I combined both of the words I wanted to say. Um, especially when Dean Lowry left, Reed went back to Seattle, opens up a lot of opportunities. Obviously, Devontae White, a lot of eyes are on him, and whole lot of buzz, and I love it. I love it. Um, but it's certainly an area of the roster that could get a lot better.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that was the main thing last year was that we thought they looked so good against the Packers offensive line in camp, but it just happened to be that the Packers offensive line in camp wasn't that good.
No,
And now the same thing this year. So we're kind of tiptoeing around what could possibly be the same sort of issue. But like you said, a lot of hype around Devontae Wyatt in camp. He's looked notably better from a lot of players.
yeah, lighting up offensive linemen, even formidable ones. I think the latest anecdote today, as on Thursday, as we're recording this, was one-on-one drills. He
Hmm.
had John Runyon's lunch and then some, probably his dessert too. Yeah, I mean the guy clearly has talent. It's why the Packers took him in the first round last year, one of their two first round picks,
Hmm.
and he's Rob Domofsky. Sorry, Rob Domofsky wrote the other day for ESPN that he's kind of the breakout star of this camp. He just has all the opportunity that he can really kind of become the 1-2 to Kenny Clark. And, you know, again, talking about the Packers run defense and everything like that, like Matt Schneider or Schneeman wrote in the run up to start of camp and everything like that, that the line ranked dead last in defensive rush EPA per snap since Brian Gutekunst has been the GM of the Packers. So that is 5 years. That's a big enough sample size to kind of show you that, hey, let's start to learn from the error of your ways and kind of maybe reinforce, this area of the roster because obviously you can only go from here. But when it's
Right.
been that stark of a problem and that crosses over to defense coordinators as well, um, that's a bad sign.
Right. Right. Exactly. Um, Paul Brettel reporting today that, like Brian Gutekunst said, that the Packers have a lot of pass options. So when it comes to playing time um, for Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden, that it's going to really, well, and Chris Slayton for that matter, and probably even TJ Slayton, um,
Yep.
that the big differentiator will be how they hold up against the run, because the run, like as you mentioned, has been atrocious the last few years, and take one practice is worth what you want, but today they got kind of gashed by the run in a 4-minute drill as well. Um, so here's to hoping that they can kind of shore that up and Devontae Wyatt and Kenny Clark can hold down that middle piece. That's kind of the hope for the season, right? Is that Devontae Wyatt and Kenny Clark can really become those guys in the middle that stuff those runs, block those holes so that the defense can get off the field.
Yep. Yep. It's tale as old as time.
Hmm.
But that is definitely the biggest thing that we'd like to see from the defense going forward.
Right. And it wasn't just coaches and us talking about Devontae Wyatt. Elton Jenkins was talking, or sorry, Devontae Wyatt was talking with Ryan Wood, and Ryan Wood tweeted that Elton Jenkins interrupted it and said, "We can kind of decipher this as we go, or at least try to." Quote: "He's like Muhammad Ali. You can't hit what you can't see." End quote. Ryan Wood asked Jenkins about Wyatt's spin on John Runyon 1v1 and said, "You'll turn on the lights off and he'll be back standing right here before the room gets dark." Sure. All right, Elton Jenkins. He mentioned that he's just playing faster this year than what you didn't see this last year with Devontae Wyatt. So that's really important. Really, really, really important that he was always fast with the ball trailing. Like if you remember last year, he was always in on tackles that he was like catching up on. Like he was always just in on those tackles where he was running behind to get the ball carrier. But
Yeah.
being a force in the backfield, I think, is the next big step he needs to become an actual force on the interior line.
And I apologies for not attributing this the way that I normally like to, but I think I saw some quotes about it. Actually, might have been the Rob Domofsky piece um, that he talked about the rookie wall and stuff like that. Of just like
Mm-hmm.
you know, you. I think we kind of overlook how you go from being drafted or the run up to being drafted, where you have no idea where you're going to be. You're testing. You're interviewing with all these teams. And you can think of like so many possibilities where you just want to make it to the NFL, but it's all about this right situation. It's about what It's different than the NBA where some players can, if they're good enough, they can really kind of guide where they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL, it's like it's bodies on bodies. You know what I mean? And then you go from that to, hey, a week later you got to go to your new team. You're going to OTAs. You're doing all this stuff. Get your feet wet. It's like it's constant. There really is no off season
No, there isn't.
for a rookie, and that can be daunting. Like that's why like it's just not it, to be the outlier of establishing yourself very quickly, regardless of what position it is after you get drafted. It's very impressive when that happens. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, Devontae White clearly has talent, all that stuff. Now with a full off season, knowing what's expected of him. I mean, I'm glad that he's kind of taking this as much as he has because he can really, really be a difference maker for this team.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think he needs to be for the Packers defense to be good too, frankly.
Oh yeah,
Like you don't want to pin all the hopes and the dreams of the Packers defense on a sophomore year guy, but with how bad the run defense was in years of past, like you kind of have to be that guy and
yeah.
prove why they took you in the first round. It's I shouldn't have to be reductive about it or have to apologize for being reductive about it, but it really is that simple. Like without another big guy inside to go with Kenny Clark, it's kind of easy just to double team the guy Kenny Clark, and then run up the middle or run
Yep.
on the outside a little bit. Like it's
Yep.
just too easy.
Mm.
Colby Wood and Carl Brooks, I think they'll have a chance to get there. I think Carl Brooks was a fifth round pick and Colby Wooden was a sixth. I might have that flip flopped, or they're both six. But
I want to say Brooks is earlier. Fourth round sounds like that was him, and then maybe Wooden. But maybe I'm flipping them now.
looks like it was Colby Wooden in the. If my page wants to load, Colby Wooden in the fourth. You're right, and Carl Brooks in the sixth.
Ah, okay.
So, regardless, I think if this is a similar situation in past years where you drafted them, you might as well give them a shot. And I think they'll definitely keep earning those shots so long as they're not really tanking it in preseason. Like I think they'll get their opportunity to just kind of show what they have, considering that if no one's really stepping up to be the number two or number three for that matter, why not just keep the rookies kind of thing?
That's the thing too, is that for kind of more general look at it, three of the how many draft picks? I know the Packers have taken a lot of draft picks the last couple of years, but three of them are spent on linemen, defensive linemen, one a premium pick with Devontae Wyatt. They're trying to figure this out. There is investment in it. It's not like kind of just status quo or anything like that, or signing guys to minimum contracts or 1 year flyers. Like
Mm-hmm.
Jaron Reed, we overlook it, but he was decent enough to like, hey, maybe you should bring him back if you're really worried about defensive line depth.
Right.
Now it's tougher to rely on guys that are younger, maybe not as heralded or established in the NFL if they're have had a couple years, but
Mm-hmm.
that's where the Packers are at. It's a very young. Besides Kenny Clark, it's really young, and it's up to guys to kind of you know really just step up and take the reins. I mean, there's some kind of not glowing, but some positive remarks about Jonathan Ford, who end of the roster guy. could not tell you how many snaps he had last year or anything like that. But like LaFleur was kind of piping him up in practice recently too. So it's clear that they want this to work out. They're putting investment in with picks or bolstering with guys that they have kept with for the last couple of years besides Kenny Clark.
Hmm.
And it's about time that starts panning out. That's for sure.
That's the hope, right? Like, if
Yeah.
they can start having these guys hit versus not hit, I think that'd be a much better situation for them to be in. And like for all intents and purposes, Jerron Reed being back in Seattle isn't good for the Packers. He still had four
No.
sacks last year, and he had a forced fumble. So like that's just stats that somebody needs to replace, and it's easy to like say that. So I guess candidly, but it's a matter of fact. You hate to like invoke Moneyball into this, but you have to find players to replace players you lost.
Yep.
And Jerron Reed was a plus for the Packers last year, and he man,
Especially down the stretch.
right, he played well down the stretch, and
That Miami game, that's where if I remember correctly, that was the forced fumble game, and that
yep,
really turned around that game,
hmm,
especially when things were very dire and there's no margin for error.
right,
And when guys step up like that, that is worth rewarding or commemorating too.
yeah, exactly. And so it'll be up to the TJ Slaytons, the Jonathan Fords of this group to really show out and maybe push Devontae Wyatt to be that second guy. If they want to be the second guy, go ahead and be it.
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. I want to be Devontae Wyatt because I think he has the tools to do it, and he looks visibly faster, just in clips and what people are saying. Like if he's going to be as fast as some people are saying, he's going to be a problem inside, and that's a
Yeah.
good thing to have for the Packers. But if he's not
Yes.
going to show that in these preseason games, maybe other guys do, and kind of get in there for that second spot. But I'm excited to see what he can do for these preseason games. I want to see him start firing off the ball.
Same. Same.
I wonder how much they'll play him honestly, because he's only a sophomore. It's not like he has a locked up spot like he should,
No, I mean
but he still
he
needs to.
showed out by the last couple of games, and it was kind of like finally you give him this opportunity, but
Right,
it does work. There, it's a two-way street.
exactly. He still needs to
So
prove himself. It's not like It's not like he's proved anything enough to be really locked down.
yeah, yeah, it's not like a Aaron Jones situation or trying to think of names because
Jair,
Jair, yeah, like
Aaron
even
Jones, AJ
maybe
Dillon, Jair,
Preston Smith,
Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Preston
yeah,
Smith. Yeah. Devondre
but
Campbell, honestly, even though we talked about him last year suffering from not playing in preseason. So
yeah,
we'll probably see him play,
there's only
honestly.
so many locks that we can say like, hey, these guys maybe get a series or two
Right.
in all three preseason games. Never
I,
mind a handful or
right.
one of three.
I would bet everybody plays at least one series, but like I wouldn't imagine Jair plays more than one or two in the like
No,
entire preseason. Aaron Jones might play one or two, but I think most of like the stars and the veterans on this team aren't going to play a whole lot in preseason, obviously,
yeah,
which just opens up the door. Kenny Clark's not going to play like more than
yeah,
like 3-4 series. I'd bet he didn't have a good year last year, so maybe they give him some more run in preseason just to get warmed up and things like that. But I would bet that it's going to be a lot of the guys you mentioned: Devontae White, TJ Slayton, Jonathan Ford, Brooks, and Wooden. So maybe some Chris Slayton and some other guys in the fourth quarter, but it's going to be a lot of those first four in the first
yeah.
half. So, should we go on to the edge rushers and talk
Let's
about
do
our rookie
it.
draft pick, first round pick?
Let's do it.
Players returning. Rashawn Gary, once he comes off the physically unable to perform list from his torn ACL last year. Side note and plug, go check out Bill Huber's article on Rashawn Gary's journey back, recovering from his ACL. He talked to Rashawn Gary's mother. Awesome piece. Been a big fan of Bill's for years, so go check that out. Preston Smith, Kingsley Enagbare, and Justin Hollins are all players returning. The rookies, Lucas Van Ness, first round pick and Brenton Cox Jr., an undrafted free agent out of Georgia and Florida, having been dismissed from both programs. A couple bubble guys, also undrafted free agents. Keyshawn Banks and Kenneth Odom Gibu we'll go with. NFL international representative, as well as the aforementioned Aaron Mosby. Edge, one of the deeper spots the Packers have at this very moment, when healthy. Like Rashawn Gary is expected to be back ish time for week one at this rate. I think Bill Huber said in that piece that he's on the cusp of making his training camp debut. So take that for what you will. He didn't really give any more information about how close it actually is or how words are being reported as, but I think he is pretty close. But when they're healthy, Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith is a pretty good set of edge rushers to have.
I would say so. I think Rashawn Gary is a bona fide star.
Yeah, he was on pace for DPOY last year. He was doing so good.
Actually, I have a stat. Right in our notes.
Love it.
Packers had a 40% pressure rate when Rashawn Gary was on the field last year. After he got injured, so week 9 onwards, that number fell to 32% when the Packers were without him.
That's so
ESPN
sad.
stats and info. So, and if you, the thing about that stat is what's even more remarkable is that there was not a lot of rotation in the edge rushers when Rashawn Gary was playing.
No, there wasn't.
And if you were expecting that level of pass rush 2 out every 5 passing plays, that's pretty damn good. And the guy that's creating those pressures is feasting on them. He's getting sacks. He's getting hurries, whatever knockdowns, or whatever stat that they think of beyond sacks.
He had 6 sacks in the 9 games he played last year. I believe it was 9 games.
Yeah.
Yep, 9 games. So pretty good. He had 24 hurries, 8 hits, just 38 total pressures. So, like we said,
9 games.
Pretty darn
Not
good.
even a fourth.
Yeah.
If we're really talking about it.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah, he's the Packers when he is ready, willing, and able at 100%. Like he can really make waves with this defense. That is where, like, I know we love the new thing and all that stuff, but like Rashawn Gary is so close to being like a household name of like.
He should be there already, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If it wasn't for the
injury last year, I think he gets there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's up there with one of the top edge rushers in the league when he's healthy. And I think what's going to be really good is that if you can get Lucas Van Ness to develop and be that guy, like I think what's really interesting is that it's changed so fast from what we expected Lucas Van Ness to be after the draft. All the draft analysis was that he was going to be raw, he's not going to start right away, and that it's going to be a year, possibly 2, until he's a bona fide player and capable starter. Right, exactly. Yep. And so, but now you see him in camp, it's like, you're going to keep him off the field? Like, are you going to be able to do that? And that's kind of where we're sitting. It's going to be an interesting way that this goes throughout the season. Like, it'll be curious.
I mean, +2, it should be noted that Justin Hollins, at least in the first few practices, I'm not sure about today, but when it's been like starting 11 or the ones, quote unquote, he has been with Preston Smith. That has steadily or slowly changed. I know there's like notes about like the competition practices or like battles, whatever you want to call it, the 2-minute drills, 4-minute, whatever. Lucas Van Ness was paired with Preston Smith on the edge. So I do think like there's a lot of question marks with the defensive line until they show that they have some market improvement, even if it's going from 32 to 31.
Right.
But I like where we are with the edge rushers edge rushing department.
Yeah, it is. It is good.
Even with Gary not going to be, he's
Not gonna
still,
be
it's
back,
going to take
right?
some time.
Right.
But again, Justin Hollins really showed stuff during the
He
last
did.
few games after the Packers claimed him.
So did Enigbare, for what it's worth. Like Kingsley Enigbare was
Hmm.
good last year. Um, of note, Rob Dembowski reporting that the Packers have kept at least one undrafted rookie on the initial roster for 18 straight seasons. Look for Brenton Cox Jr., a stellar talent who got kicked off two college to football teams to extend that streak. He's gotten some buzz in the last couple of practices. Obviously, it's only been a week and a
I
half.
think today too, he had
Yeah,
some
today for
nice
sure.
moments.
But I think I think they're gonna keep six guys, like with Rashawn Gary being healthy, and so
Gary, Smith,
yep,
Enigbari, obviously Lucas Van Ness,
just the top six.
Hollins,
Yep, and then Cox.
and Cox.
Yeah, I think they keep him because you don't get this is very surface level knowledge as not having all of the scouting on Brenton Cox Jr. from his college days, but you don't go to Georgia because you're an okay player. You don't go to
Yeah,
Florida
you're a blue
because
chip
you're
guy.
you're an okay player. They're blue chip guys, and he has off the field issues of not being able to keep focused that got him kicked off the team. And I guess I don't want to say off the field issues. That makes it sound like it's criminal. I don't think it's criminal. I think it's more focus and attitude based from what I had read about in the offseason. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
I
I don't.
probably
I
should have looked this up before
yeah.
recording, but that yeah,
I'll double check, but I'm pretty certain that it wasn't. It wasn't anything like that. But the point being, is that he has talent, and he really
yeah,
has, just the ability to showcase himself during this camp, to where if he does well, they might have found a hidden gem in the undrafted free agent market to really shore up their edge rushers for the next decade.
I have some info,
Okay.
just some digging as you. So he started at Georgia, played really well after I believe his freshman season. Yeah, he only played one season there. He got dismissed from the team, from the Atlanta Journal Constitution. They were just saying it was extremely vague
Yeah.
of what actually happened. So there's not really a lot of information about why he left Georgia or why he was dismissed.
Yep.
With the Gators, he immediately applied for a waiver to play for them, but it was denied going into his sophomore season. He had to sit out. Then he was named a starter going into his redshirt sophomore season. He was kicked off the Gators football team on October 31st, 2022, after a series of incidents with coaches and strength and conditioning staff.
So
That's per Wikipedia,
a lot of
which
attitude
also
stuff.
a lot of attitude stuff.
Yeah. So again, if his attitude is right and he wants to actually play football, I think he has a good shot of being the sixth edge rusher on this team
Yeah.
because he's showing out. Somebody had him. I think was it Ron Dvoski's like player of camp so far, or
That was Wyatt.
that was Wyatt. My apologies. My apologies. But still, that's good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's really it. I think we kind of talked about Enigbari a little bit, making a jump in year two is going to be important for him. Obviously, once they get Rashawn Gary back, it's going to be an interest. Like it's Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith aren't going to play every down, so they'll have to mix in some of
Nor
these
should
other
they.
guys. Right? Nor should they have to mix in some of these down the line guys into the defensive scheme once in a while. But ultimately, like Hollins, Enigbare, and Cox wouldn't play too much on the edge, depending on week to week, injury to injury kind of stuff. I think we'll see Lucas Van Ness sprinkled in a lot of places this year just to get him run and get him some experience because that's kind of what they're ramping up to. And if he's showing out in that experience, he'll definitely earn himself a playing spot.
Yeah. That'll be, I mean, again, that isn't too dissimilar to how he was used in Iowa,
Right, exactly.
and it worked out well.
Yep, it sure did. But yeah, I think they keep six edge rushers. So, alrighty, on to the linebackers. We got Devondre Campbell, captain, I believe, last year. Probably will be captain again
Yes.
this year. Maybe Jair this year. I could see it being Jair this year.
Well, you'll have. Oh, that's yeah. There'll be a question.
For sure. I think they ought to stop. We'd had this discussion last year. They ought to stop making the team pick the captains. Coaches pick the captains,
Mm,
and I hope they learned that lesson last year after how much they pissed off Jair Alexander.
yeah,
That's my hope. But Devondre Campbell, Quay Walker, looking to bounce back after a tumultuous rookie season, attitude wise, played really well. When he was on, like he played a whole lot last
he
year.
was really well,
He played really
really
well,
well, played well, played really well.
but then had the unfortunate incident in Buffalo when he shoved a Bills coaching staff member, and then did the same thing week 18 like with a Detroit coaching staff member. Just lapses in judgment and clearly was beating himself up over it in the tunnel in the week 18 loss against the Detroit Lions. Another person that just needs to step up. Like I think he's in a better place than Devontae Wyatt is because he obviously played a lot more last year and showed some talent that he had. But the differences kind of have an equal sum. Devontae Wyatt needs to step up his on the field play so that he can earn himself a spot on the line. Quay Walker needs to up himself in the mental on the field play so that he can learn to be a leader and a conductor of this defense. Because when Devondre Campbell was out last year, it was just Quay Walker in the middle flying around, and he did a really good job. It just his his season got marred by those two incidents that came at really costly times in the Packers
Yep,
season.
yep, yeah. I mean, the last game of the season, a game that decided your fate, whether you made the playoffs or not,
Mm-hmm.
and the game was in the balance when that happened. But it again, the fact that it marred so much of his season, you forget that he was named to the All Rookie team last
Mm-hmm.
year.
Exactly.
He did really well and was put in, not in ideal circumstances, especially as you noted, with Campbell being out.
Right.
But in terms of his play, he really showed that he's going to be a good foundational piece moving forward. It's just a matter of what's going on between the years, and I believe he's had some quotes about stuff that he's you know, I guess used or uh, studied up or anything like that of like
Right.
trying to kind of channel things more positively and realize, you can't just be that kind of force of nature, let emotions get the best of you at all times, even after the whistle gets blown or anything like that. So,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly. Um, Hopefully, I'm really hopeful. I want to see him play this year. He's going to play, obviously, but he was so special last year that I'm really excited as to what sort of jump he can make this year.
yeah.
But the other players returning, Isaiah McDuffie and Eric Wilson, and the bubble guys being Tariq Carpenter and Jimmy Phillips Jr., an undrafted rookie free agent. Tariq Carpenter returning, correct?
Draft pick last year, return. Yeah,
Yeah. He had a couple nice plays and on to training camp last week. Made a really good break on the ball that slipped through his hands, but was still a good break on the ball. These these inside linebackers, I think, are going to be. I don't want to say touch and go, but I just don't think you see a lot of Isaiah McDuffie and Eric Wilson or Tariq Carpenter, any of them, much in the regular season when push comes to shove. You'll see a lot of them in preseason, but it's ultimately going to be Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker playing in the middle, most defensive snaps, one or the other, or both, depending on the alignment.
yeah. These are probably the biggest locks on the roster.
Yeah,
It's Quay, it's Campbell.
yeah.
That's about it.
I think it'll be like Quay, Devondre Campbell, and Isaiah McDuffie for sure,
Yeah.
and like they might keep a fourth. Um,
Maybe Carpenter pushes Wilson.
yeah, they had what looks like a lot of linebackers last year. I'm trying to count on Pro Football Reference here, but obviously edge rushers and uh, inside linebackers are still labeled linebackers by most of the football websites because pick your reason why. But it looks like they kept 16 linebackers total, so they keep 6 edge rushers. They had that doesn't make sense math wise, but I don't think they're keeping 10 linebackers. Frankly,
Mm.
it's not offensive linemen. They're not that important as inside linebackers. But oh, I forget that also includes like has the 90-man roster on it too.
Yeah.
So like Colby Jones didn't play much last year. He's on the practice squad, and so same thing with Tipa Galloway. He was also on the practice squad for a while, and Ladarius Hamilton. So um, I guess we'll talk about this quote from Rob Domboski. I like this quote. It's a good little tidbit for what the season's bringing us. Quote, look for defensive coordinator Joe Barry to move Walker around more this season, bringing him off the edge at times. If Joe Barry wants to get wild, I hope that his defense is just set to begin with, frankly. But that's just me.
Yeah.
I feel like we have enough edge rushers to where we don't need Quay all that off the edge, but as a different look, why not? I feel like we did see Quay off the edge once in a while last year, too. Maybe it was
I
just
want to say, so I think, yeah, there was a handful of times I remember certainly wasn't a lot, but
no, it for sure wasn't a lot, but I feel like I did see him like certainly flying around off the edge, going for sacks and things like that.
yeah.
I'm trying to see if I can bring up his alignment on Pro Football Reference. Lined up on defensive line 75 times last year out of his
A lot more than I thought or would
yeah
have guessed, I guess.
out of his total snaps of 846. So a little less than 10% of the
Yeah.
time across all of the season, obviously. But it was more so, I think, opponent based. He did it 17 times in week 11 against Tennessee, and he did it 15 times in week 16 against the Dolphins. Otherwise, it was mostly single digit times across the
Hmm.
rest of the season.
Interesting.
Most of the time in the box. So, which makes sense. He's an inside linebacker.
Yeah.
So maybe that gets bumped up to like 15, 20%. Um, but yeah, Tree Carpenter was a safety last year, and so they moved him to inside linebacker. Um, Mostly a special teams player. I think he was
Yes.
a gunner, and they're just trying to find room for him, which kind of makes
Yeah.
sense. So
Yeah.
if he wants to be running downhill from the box and stuffing holes, fine by me. If he's fast like that,
Yeah, he's in like the Dallin Levitt.
love it.
I always love it. Um, kind of category mold. Just
Yeah.
putting him in a position group of his values on special teams, which again, gonna be important.
Absolutely. Not too much else from the linebackers, honestly.
No.
So should we go to the secondary, where there's a little more discussion to be had in one of the positions versus the other.
Oh yeah.
Corners. Players returning: Jair Alexander, Russell Douglas, Eric Stokes once he gets back from injury, and Keyshawn Nixon, the All Star from last year. I should say Pro Bowler, but rookies: Carrington Valentine, Terrell Ford, and William Hooper. Terrell Ford and William Hooper being undrafted free agents, and then bubble guys: Shamar, John Charles, Corey Valentine, and Keandre Thomas. I think top 4 are locked no matter what. Like Jair Razul, Eric Stokes, and Keyshawn Nixon are locks. I think the only way any of those guys are even close to being gone is if Razul's shit talking from today becomes a bigger problem across training camp. Like, I guess Razul was at practice today telling the offense that they suck and really talking a whole lot of trash towards the offense, which you love it to see a competitive nature at camp, but it took Aaron Jones coming over to Razul and telling him to knock it off to get him to calm down a little bit. So I don't think that's an issue. I just think that that's the only way those top 4 guys are being unseated from those spots.
Strap City, baby. Strap City.
It's something like
It is something. Um, again, I kind of view this more, even with Stokes injured, and there's been buzz about him coming back or starting to come back during camp,
Mm-hmm.
but it hasn't been as loud as Gary at this point. Um, I would say that I think again, there's a lot of locks and stuff like that. There's a lot of Valentine, whatever you would
Mm-hmm.
teen time. It's his time. That's what I'm trying to say here. Pick six in practice the other day off of
Yep.
Danny Etling. Um, Strong buzz out of OTAs. Take that for what you will. But seventh round pick, be damned. This guy is making plays and he's making a good impression. Um, I certainly would feel a lot better on him than Jean Charles.
He's played well too. Like he's had a couple.
Yeah, what is this, year three for him?
I think so.
Right?
Yeah, it is. He wasn't a rookie last year, so yeah. If it's year three, then I could definitely see Valentine sort of usurping him in that spot. I wouldn't be sad
Yeah.
about it, honestly. But I think Shamar has played well enough to at least be in that conversation at this very moment.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, again, this could easily change when preseason games roll around and
Yep.
SJC, and that's what I want to call him, makes a good impression and shows out or something like that. But
Mm.
certainly, Carrington Valentine has kind of taken and grabbed the baton
Yeah.
and the football because, again, he had a pick
Had
six
a pick six in
in
practice.
practice.
So that's good stuff, and it's always good to see those plays being made in practice. Like I think, like you said, it's really going to matter once preseason starts, and that's when we'll really get into some of these nuts and bolts kind of discussions. But I think they have to keep probably 8, 9 cornerbacks because you had to have enough for nickel and dime packages, which is, I guess
Four or five.
I should say 5 or 6 secondary people, not just cornerbacks, because you have your safety or two, and then nickel is 5 secondary players, dime is 6, and you're not going to roll out 6 of the top only 6 corners. You'll have 2 safeties for sure in that scenario, but
And within that, they have to figure out when Stokes gets back.
yeah,
What is the alignment? It did not work out well with Rosie playing the slot when everybody was healthy. Eric Stokes, too, for what it's worth, did not have a good year until he got hurt with that in mind.
right,
So it's a little bit of a situation to figure out. Keyshawn Nixon, we love him. He's, again, difference maker on this team. Being the slot corner is going to be a tall task for him to be a solid slot corner. He's from reading anecdotes from practice and stuff like that. The Packers have really tested him in that mold. Jordan Love, he's a rookie quarterback by name, not by years in the league, but like
right,
he's certainly gone out of his way to kind of test him too. So like
right.
that's, I don't know, it maybe I'm changing my tune here, but like it is a very, things are definitely going to evolve with the secondary, specifically the corners.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really envy how they figure that out because it could really kind of getting everything in one or getting everything locked in line
Right.
with how they want to do it. It's not going to be without lapses or ups and downs.
It's gonna be a lot of trial and error.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
like you said, just figuring out if
It's
Rasul on
a
the outside
talent
or
play.
Stokes on the inside, like it's gonna be kind of testing it out week to week as to who's performing better.
It's a talent play and trying to fit square pegs in round holes.
Yeah, which is a problem. Which is where you'd like to see one of these like unknown guys kind of pop off and make a name for themselves to really lock down a position. Honestly,
Yeah.
like if Carrington Valentine or Corey
Bill
Ballantine
Hooper.
or any of these guys, yeah, Bill Hooper, any of these guys really want to like show out and stand out that they can be that guy on the outside or that guy on the inside of the slot. Go for it. It's there for the taking because they have 4 guys but only one of them really knows where to play. Like,
One
oh,
of them is locked in.
right, only Jair
Yeah.
like knows to play outside, and so if they can like that, the other outside corner and the slot corner are up for grabs as to who really wants to play where. And I think that'll be important to figure out.
It's going to be a tough needle thread.
And I don't know if Joe Barry can do it.
No, I think that part of it too. I think this might be a natural segue into the next
Into
group.
safeties.
It's it, it's not as like correlated to like how wide receivers and tight ends are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the fact that there is just so much uncertainty, there's a lot of like one practice. It's Savage and Rudy Ford playing, safeties and doing well or something like that, and then they switch it up, and then other guys are getting looks. Like it's the safety position is really by committee, and no one there isn't a the biggest lock is Savage, and there's been so many ups and downs with him
Yeah. If he can
that
play
like
like last year, like late last year Savage, that'll be fine. If he
the
plays like,
Vikings game.
yeah, if he plays like early year Savage, then it's going to be tough sledding the entire year.
Yeah,
But
you know.
safeties returning: Darnell Savage, Rudy Ford, Jonathan Owens, Ennis Gaines, Tarvarius Moore, and Dallin Levitt. Tarvarius Moore not returning, signed him from the 49ers in the offseason. Rookies: Anthony Johnson Jr., who they drafted late, I think 5th round. And
I
Benny.
want to say was that a seventh rounder? No, I mixing up with Valentine. I think.
Hold on, I'll look. 7th round. You're right.
Oh,
Look at you, remembering 4 months ago. Could not be me. Could absolutely not be me. Benny Sapp the third, an undrafted free agent, and the bubble guys are Ennis Gaines and obviously Benny Sapp. So Ennis Gaines has actually gotten a lot of buzz this camp. Like, I think I've seen a lot of articles from beat writers talking about how he's a player to watch to snatch one of those safety spots, and that he's improving a whole lot from last year.
okay. All right. I mean, that again, like
Right.
I'm not gonna, I don't really have any opinion on it one way or the other. Again, the landscape of this position and the fact that there's so much uncertainty over even the most established player.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, if Ennis Gaines is a starting safety for this team, I'm not going to really have that many qualms with it just because my expectations for safety are so low.
Right.
Like Tavarius Moore, solid dart throw. Jonathan Owens, solid dart throw. But these guys are 1 year, $1 million flyers.
Right.
We're not expecting. I'm not going to see on PFF that the Packers have the a top 10 safety group or anything like that.
Right.
I would be shocked.
Right. The
But
his path to making the team lies within his ability to play the slot and his special teams play.
yes,
Because Paul Brettel wrote this a week ago, talking about his play during the box. During the last 3 games of the regular season, Gaines saw 32 snaps in the slot, another 9 in the box, and allowed 4 completions on 5 targets, but limited pass catchers to just 7 yards per catch. So that's good.
that's
And
good.
if he can play around kind of like that and play that well in camp and showcase that he has talent at that safety spot, he might just go get it, and that's fine.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
fine. Like he had as a special teamer, my apologies, special teamer in return and coverage units. He didn't see steady playing time until week 12. This is, like I said, all from Paul Brettel's article last week. But despite ranking 19th in special teams snaps on the team, he was able to showcase his playmaking abilities, ranking 6th in solo tackles with 4. So if you can be effective in an area of need that the Packers have, which is special teams and safety, I think he has a pretty open road to making this roster.
Matt LaFleur had interesting quote. It was more so about the running back competition. We talked about it plenty on the last pod. Again,
Uh-huh.
listen to the last pod if you have not listened to this. This is part 2. That was part 1. But it's more about if you're this kind of player, if you're deep within the roster or deep within the depth chart, 90-man roster, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
you're trying to make the team. It's not just about how you show up in one-on-ones or your position group. It's about they are really valuing you doing your job on special teams.
Yeah.
If that's the most time that you're going to see the field. And Matt LaFleur really spoke highly of that, how important that is to the coaching staff, to the decision makers that are going to make these cuts or make these decisions on the roster guys
Right.
in a month. So I think that's where guys like again, it's like if anybody wants to take the reins with this position,
Go
by all
for it.
means,
It's
go
there
for
for
it.
the taking.
Go for it. Yeah.
And that's where another player like Dalen Levitt can also be effective. He was a
Yep.
big special teamer last year. He didn't play a whole lot of snaps on defense, if at all, if I'm looking at PFF correctly. Excuse me. And that's where the bread is gonna be buttered for these guys. Like they just have to be effective special teams players. And by all means, Dale Levitt was that um, last year for the Packers.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to talk about with safeties? Anthony Johnson Jr. I think has gotten buzz. I would imagine they probably keep him. I don't want to say imagine, but I think he'll probably be on the practice squad if nothing else. I would imagine they don't want to give up on a safety they drafted, even though it was the seventh round. Given the state of the safety room, like they probably just want to stick with guys, see if they can develop them, so they don't have to keep doing this every year with safeties.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know.
Rudy Ford played very well last year. Had a couple interception game, I believe.
That Cowboys game.
Yep. So he'll be a candidate to snag a spot. Simone Biles' husband, Jonathan Owens, has a chance to snag a spot. Um, and it's up for the taking. Like we've said it, we'll say it again. Like it's wide open. The preseason games are going to matter for this because I think Darnell Savage will probably play at least a quarter, probably play at least a half some of these games.
You have to play a little bit more.
He might need to play a little bit more. And a lot of these guys are going to play. They can't afford to not have all of them get significant playing time because they just don't know.
Yeah. Since you have been on it in terms of putting a number, we have how many guys? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many of the 8 safety players do you think they ultimately carry into the
Look,
final 53?
it looks like they kept 4 on the roster last year. Dalen Levitt, Rudy Ford, Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, 5, and Tariq Carpenter. So I'd probably give a guess to say they probably go 4 and then keep an extra cornerback to see if they can just throw a guy back there for safety if things start going poorly. Like I think they have more talent at the cornerback position than they do at the safety position. And I think I'd rather just give that.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Like if we're going back to the cornerback position, cornerbacks, Jair, Razul, Eric Stokes, and Keyshawn Nixon
Yeah.
are the top 4.
Lots.
Carrington Valentine showcasing a better
Ball
camp.
hawk skills.
Right. Shamar John Charles, while not the greatest, probably better than, say, Jonathan Ford. Not Jonathan. I'm sorry.
Owens.
Yeah, Jonathan Owens or Anthony Johnson Jr. right away. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think they just have more experience at cornerback to where it wouldn't hurt to have more experience than less experience with some of these guys. Nothing really intrigues me about safety. And it's such a
And yet it is such a weak link that it forces me to be intrigued by it.
well. That's what
You know what I mean?
we're coming at it from different angles.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
intrigued by how crap it is, and who's going to come out of the crap pile.
I wouldn't say it's. Maybe I don't want to denigrate it. I do think it's probably the worst position
Right.
group. in the NFL.
That's what I'm saying. I don't want to say in the NFL because I don't have enough knowledge of everybody else's stuff to really go there. But it's for sure the weakest link on the Packers
Yes.
across the board, and it's not close. And the players there don't move me enough to really want to keep an extra one of them to see
Yeah.
what they can do over what I know I already have in these other guys. Like, yes, Shamar John Charles may not be like a standout corner, but I know what I have in him. And I know that he might get burned sometimes, but some of these other guys, it it could go even more poorly. Like Tavarius Moore is the most experienced one on there, I'm pretty sure, right? He's like the veteran of the group. I don't think he's
I think
is
Savage technically is, but outside
outside
of
of
Savage,
Savage.
yeah,
It just there isn't a lot to pick from there.
no,
It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Like it's what do you want to
yeah,
do? And I'd rather go with the one I know.
fair. That's fair.
I can scheme plays around what I know, around
Versus what you
versus
don't know. Yeah,
I know John Charles's detriments as if I'm Joe Barry, I should know his detriments as a player after watching him for the last 2 years. I don't know what Anthony Johnson Jr. might have a breakdown in during a critical time. I don't know what Jonathan Owens or Tavarius Moore might have as a breakdown later in the season if push comes to shove and they need to play. You know what I mean? Like it's just
yeah,
it's weighing those options, and that's just kind of how I see it at this moment.
fair, fair. All good points.
It all comes back to losing Adrian Amos. Like he didn't play, he didn't have the greatest season last year, but
No,
his downfall is kind of why we're here in the first place. If he played well last year, he'd probably still be on the team. But it's tough. It's tough. Um, Anything else on secondary?
no. Again, Stokes is the biggest. We'll keep tabs on when he comes back because he's going to be relied on at least if he's that much, or I guess expected to be relied on, even with again, just because you come back from injury doesn't mean that there is an adjustment with how you play post injury too. So he's the big one. Finding out the alignment with the cornerback situation when that happens,
Mm-hmm.
safety, who can take it, who can take this position.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at.
I think it's time to move on to special teams. Kickers. We have a kicker technically.
We do.
Draft pick Anders Carlson is having a very tumultuous camp. I'm trying to find the exact number.
I have the stats.
You have the stat. Thank you.
Bill Huber again comes in the clutch.
Thank you, Bill.
He wrote Thursday night, the Thursday evening. I believe he is 16 for 27.
That's what I thought he was, but I couldn't. I didn't want to speak incorrectly.
I will also say a lot of the misses that he has had have come with. Um, we haven't gone through all the special teams players, but a punter who is not necessarily guaranteed to make the Packers roster, Daniel Whelan, and the long snapper who does not have a $400,000 guarantee, Rodden Hatcher.
That's where most of his kicks have been coming from. Like he's been
Most of the misses,
misses have
I
been
believe,
with that long that crew for long snapper and holder.
yes. Take that for what you will. It doesn't ultimately change the fact that he's
It's
60
giving
for
me
27.
a like hesitant to blame it on that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, you don't want to be like, oh, it's this. He's gonna be fine.
right.
Yeah.
He has a lot of leg,
Damn.
but
If I had a nickel for any time that someone said that with me, I would have
but
no
he like
nickels.
he he was hitting from 60 and like getting it in the air past the poles, like and not by a close margin, like clearing the goal.
Power is not the problem. It's more
It's
of
the accuracy, and so it was abysmal on Saturday. abysmal
Yeah, you were
joke.
there. It
Two
was.
like 2 for 7, and the misses were not close. Like most of them are wide left, and it makes me so nervous. I think Aaron Nagler mentioned that they may not have a kicker, but they do have two punters between Daniel Weiland and Pat O'Donnell because they've been like kicking the hell out of the ball. So if they can, Pat O'Donnell, I feel like had like a mediocre year last year. If you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, that was kind of sentiment. He had some poor stats to go
I think we looked at it. It
with
was
his
a lot
season.
better than what we
I
remember.
thought it was the opposite, but I have forgotten. Um, but it's for sure a punter battle. Like that's absolutely what is happening in Green Bay right now. Um, both of them absolutely just kicking the ball very far and very high.
52 punts, 2,313 yards, an average of 44.5 yards per punt.
29th in the NFL.
Uh, Well, there's that.
You're talking.
Uh,
I'm looking at PFF. He had a punt gross average of 44.48.
He also had
So
2 punts blocked.
that's not necessarily
46.2% of his punts were inside the 20 and a 1.9 touchback percentage.
um pinned inside the 20. He had 26 of those punts, tied for 18th. So by no means a great year from Pat O'Donnell. And I think this is anecdotal, but a lot of those bad punts came at pretty poor times, similar to
Yeah.
oh, what's his name? I just said his name the other day. J.K. Scott. Like would always have
Oh,
the
yeah.
worst punts at the worst possible times that would set up the Packers defense pretty poorly.
Yeah.
And so all I'm looking for out of a punter is consistency. Just down the middle, make it deep. Like I don't like yeah, putting the ball inside the 10 or inside the 5 is really really valuable from a punter. It's what you
Especially if you got
want,
those gunners.
right? Like
Strap City, baby.
if you have Johnny Hecker, if I believe that's his name. Um,
Oh, yeah. The Rams guy. Yeah.
yeah, like
Or Once Upon a Time.
once upon a time, that's a valuable piece to have, really valuable. But
Turns out establishing field position for the other team is very good.
it's very good. But
I didn't have to be that Rich Biasacha walked into Lambeau Field to tell them that, but that
yeah,
has certainly been a big theme.
right. And so as valuable as it is, I'd rather them just punt it long to get it into the end zone because he had almost 10 yards per return last year. Like if you can't punt it far, at least punt it high. If you can't punt it high, at least punt it far. And he wasn't doing either of them consistently.
Mhm.
So like
I
45 yards.
believe there was that Bills game that he just had an abysmal punt, which is not surprising. It's Buffalo in October, and they play outdoors, so
Right.
you're bound to. If there's a stadium that I would say that happens a lot, I would believe it's in Buffalo.
He only had one punt return for 17 yards in Buffalo. Like he had not too many like yardage. He had two returned against New England for a total of 50, which isn't that good either. But
That is grody.
otherwise he only had two above 30, three above 25. But total punts last year again we're just down. He had 7 punts in the Tampa game because remember that game was ugly,
He
ugly.
was he was a MVP of that
I
game.
think we gave him a cheese that game.
Oh yeah, we definitely did. We definitely did. I remember watching that game and it was
But like he didn't have
ugly.
in the second half of the season, he didn't have a whole lot of times he punted. After the Dallas game, or I'm sorry, after the Tennessee game, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Like he punted a lot in the beginning of the season, 4, 2, 7, 5, 3, 5, 5, 2, and then 1, 4, 4. But like he just didn't have ample opportunity throughout, which is good. Like you don't want to be punting that often, but with how often the Packers are going for a fourth down, they were being in that horrendous spot on the field where you're just in the middle of can't punt and then the middle of can't kick a field goal.
Especially when Mason Crosby's leg issues were a thing
Right.
first couple weeks.
And I think that that's where becoming a valuable punter can be is that like you're never going to talk Matt LaFleur out of going for like not going for on fourth down at like the 45-yard line.
Yeah.
But if you have a good punter that can pin him inside the 5, maybe he stops going for it on 4th and 1, 4th and 2 sometimes, and decides to let his more talented side of the ball, his defense, lock down their offense and flip the field again. So I think it probably will be Pat O'Donnell. I don't think there's much of a discussion there. Like they had this a couple years ago where they brought in someone to try and replace J.K. Scott, the guy from Notre Dame, that went to Notre Dame high school. Excuse me, gave J.K. Scott a run for his money, and then we never heard from him again. Um, I think this is kind of a similar battle. So we'll see what Anders Carlson does. It's tough. 16 for 27 is not good. It's roughly 16 for 27 is under 66%.
Yeah.
It's under 2/3. So that's not good. It's not good. Mason
He's
Crosby
had some.
in Tennessee kicking field goals, so we'll see.
He's the only 10 I see. Um, Anders Carlson definitely has had a lot of accuracy issues too. So
Yeah,
I
71% in college.
yeah, I am covered by the fact that it's not the fact that he can't get it there. He can get it there. It's how do you tame the leg?
I think he is going to be.
Operation Tame the Leg, Anders.
I think he is going to be a scapegoat for a couple losses this year.
Oh,
Like
if I could put
money on it.
your words, not mine. Monopoly money.
Yes.
I would probably put that number at like 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over
Yeah.
under. Do you go higher than that?
Over under 3.
Yeah.
Let's do 3.5. Make it easier for that. Are we saying a direct result where if he made a kick, they would have won?
Yes. So like
I'd say over. At this
That's right.
at this rate, it's
at
over.
this rate, if he's the only kicker, if they don't do
Yep.
Mason Crosby in case of emergency, pull out a glass or whatever, I will say over as well.
Right. I just think like he's missing from like extra point distance is the issue.
Yeah.
He's missing from the 30s. And that's costing you points. Like 1 to 2 points is going to be a lot of what their spread is this year because they're just not going to be burning down barns in their scoring. It's going to be limited. Like I think this team is going to be similar in offensive capability as it was last year, where a lot of their games are going to be scored within the 17 to 30 range, and not a whole lot of them are over.
Tame the leg, Anders.
God.
Tame the leg. I'm trying to start a thing here.
Hashtag tame the leg.
Hashtag tame the leg.
Alrighty. Anything else on the defense side of the ball and special teams?
No, Matt Orzik. I said 400,000 for his signing bonus. It's 300,000
Yep.
For his signing bonus. He's gonna be a long snapper.
Yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't fuck it up.
I think he was good with the Rams last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I know. Again, we've been scarred.
Yeah.
We've been scarred. Even post Rich Bisaccia. Like that
Right.
was a problem last year too. So it's not an easy thing to figure it out, but Packers are trying to figure it out.
Right. They are. So, alrighty, folks. That does it for the 53-man roster fights. Positional battles. I had a family night this weekend, and like we said, the Bengals game next weekend. We'll be back next week for a brief talk with a correct if I'm wrong, Jordan. If I'm teasing appropriately, a special guest, correct? I'm pretty sure that's next week.
I think that's an appropriate tease. It is next week.
Okay, I wanted to double check. So it's been a long week and it's already late.
Oh yeah.
I just wanted to make sure my timing was right. So look out for that special guest coming next week. And then possibly a pod on the Bengals. For sure Monday or Tuesday. But
But yeah,
for
for sure
sure,
by Monday.
regardless, but depending on how busy our lives get next week.
Yes.
So check out gspn.info for all the podcast information for the Eurostep Podcast Network. Make time for this Eurostep. 1 in 6, Cruising for a Bruising, and Talk of the Tundra. You can follow me at Numac and Jordan on Twitter, and you can follow Jordan at Jordan Trusky on Twitter. Go check us out there, and you'll find all the latest and greatest. Oh, and at Packers GSPN for Talk
Yes.
of the Tundra. Go follow that account as well to see all the pod updates and memes. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. We will catch you next week. And Jordan, thank you.
Thank you.